I don't know about you, but there's certain odors that I enjoy smelling. I enjoy smelling Men and Skin Bracer aftershave. My dad used it for years. Every time I smell it, it brings back pleasant memories of my father. I like this spring smelling the magnolia tree that was blooming in the backyard of Parsons. I love to smell crabapple blossoms and homemade bread baking in the oven. We all have odors that we enjoy. And I'm going to tell you, I don't want to be offensive this morning, but what I'm about to say, I need to say to make a point. So if you would just kind of bear with me, we'll get through this together. Daddy, that's her name, is a scent detector. And for the past 35 years, she has been sticking her nose where no one else would. She's been sniffing other people's armpits, helping to concoct the perfect deodorant. It's a tough job. You know, but someone has to do it. And when it comes to BO, she says you are what you eat. Alcohol, fried chicken, pickles, garlic. Everything, she says, comes out when you sweat. What we are made of, according to the odor detector, can't be hidden. Certainly, we can try to cover it up or hide it or mask it, but the essential odor of who we are and what we've been eating and consuming and thinking about inevitably sweeps out or seeps out. In our text for today, Jesus smells something fishy. For starters, there's the very definite odor of self-righteousness. And here and elsewhere in the Gospels, Jesus has harsh words for those religious types who, in the public square, flaunt their faith. And sensing hypocrisy, Jesus is all over it. You know, they like their long robes and their best seats and all of that. And so here and elsewhere in the Gospels, Jesus has harsh words for those who wear the garments of religion over the tatters of the Spirit. For those whose bodies are slathered with ointment, but whose souls stink like the rotting flesh found in the tombs. For those who sit down with the rich but won't stand up for the poor. For those who pray long for themselves but don't stay long for others. For those who live off the backs of poor widows. For those who have time for their own people but who step to the other side of the road to avoid the foreigner. Jesus has harsh words for all those folks. And Jesus knows exactly who these people are. They stink up the place. There are the people who believe that righteousness is what you do with your hands. Jesus knows that righteousness is who you are in your heart. Like Betty, Jesus gets his face in the armpit of righteousness, and he says to his friends, such people will be punished severely. People who stink this badly cannot go without rebuke. Someone has to say something, and so Jesus does. There's also the odor of injustice and oppression. These people too often get rich at the expense of the poor. They devour widows' houses, Jesus says. And he's talking about the religious people, the leaders. Jesus said, these widows and orphans are among the poorest of the poor in the society undereducated, and underskilled, and many remain persistently broke. Folks living at the bottom of the economy are always trying to make ends meet. They're always putting off one bill to pay another, or having their lights shut off, or teetering on eviction, or choosing between medicine and food, and are often barely a half a footstep ahead of the creditor. Jesus' response to these law professors is telling. It's clear whose side Jesus is on. If the church is going to be the church, we have to look at how our lifestyle meshes with our faith. And this means thinking seriously about whether the homeless are getting a fair shake in our town, about giving food, giving to the local food banks, about whether we're doing enough to provide affordable housing for people who provide the basic services to the communities that we live in. And finally, there's the odor of humility and generosity. On that day, most everyone at the temple gave bags of silver coins to the treasury. Folks gave what they could afford, and one widow gave what she clearly couldn't afford. The widow gave the least of all the coins, as David shared with the kids, equivalent to our pennies, maybe even less than our pennies. But she gave the most relative to her income. Here, 2 copper coins came out of her poverty, not her wealth, out of her want, not out of her affluence. Perhaps she gave so much because she knew what it was like to not have enough food or warm clothes or shoes or shelter or medicine. Maybe it was because she was grateful to God for what little she did have. Where did she get the change? Perhaps she didn't have a job at all. You know, most women in that society weren't allowed to work outside the home. A woman's identity was linked to a man, either her husband or her brother or her father. And normally, wives relied on their husbands to bring home the bread. And if the husband died, God forbid, then there were very few options for a widow to earn an honest living. And as bad as it can be for the poor today, and it could be plenty bad sometimes, it was worse in ancient times. Back in the widow's day, she didn't have access to broad government help. There were no food stamps, Medicare, Medicaid, no synagogue food pantries, no church compassion funds, no SSI disability, no soup kitchens, no homeless shelters, and no Salvation Army. We don't know where she got her cash. We do know that she gave it. And for that, she has garnered the approving comments of Jesus, who allowed her to shuffle off into obscurity, not even giving us her name. For her generosity and her humility tell us what we need to know about the woman. Don't even think that God can't sniff out a hypocrite or appreciate the sin of a seriously righteous person. The sacrifices to God were often described in the Old Testament as a sweet-smelling savor to God's nose. The scent detectors come, and the widow at the temple reminds us that there's nothing that smells sweeter. Nothing that smells sweeter than generosity. Would you pray with me? We gather here at this place this day, O God, praying and hoping, God, that we, your people gathered here, might be a sweet-smelling savor to you.